everybody and welcome to my channel. I am Moody. I'm a 3D artist, as I'm sure a bunch of you already know, with a ton of experience. Today we're going to be sculpting SPIDER-GWEN. So we'll let these images play out for a second. You can have a little look at these, and we'll jump in when the actual sculpting starts. Okay, so as usual, we're going to start with the head, as I usually do on these more sort of semi-realistic sculpts. I try and get the head done so it's, you know, just finished and out of the way, and I don't have to worry about it. I can then also use it as a proportions thing to check the height of the character and make sure everything's working proportionately. So yeah, I mean, it's the usual stuff. We're going to keep symmetry going as much as we can before we, you know, put the actual character into a pose and break symmetry. So yeah, okay, so basically what I want to do is get in the comments and I want to try and find out what you guys would like to see me sculpt. My son has suggested, well, I put some ideas to him, one of them being Deku saving Eri, which is the idea that he decided, you know, would probably work and he'd like to see. So we're going to probably do Deku saving Eri for the next sculpt. But some of the other ideas I had were, for the next guy sculpt, I wanted to do maybe Margin Vegeta or All Might or somebody like that. So let me know in the comments if anybody's got an idea or a character that they'd like to see me sculpt in my style. You know, drop it in the comments and I'll see what I like and, you know, see what we end up doing. But yeah, next one's probably going to be Deku saving Eri. So yeah, with the head sculpt here, it's the same as usual. We're getting the proportions correct, you know, putting a few things in, landmarking, making sure that there's volume to the cheeks. So you saw me adding like some meat to the front, on the front side where the nose is. That's just to bring a bit of her face forward because it was looking a bit flat around the nose, and you know, you've got to add those volumes, otherwise it's just going to look just wrong, flat and wrong, and you know. So yeah, so far I'm pretty happy with the head. We're going to quickly sculpt this ear. Ears are something that has become a lot easier for me over time. You know, again, it's the same reference as I usually use because it's a good, clear reference. So what I'll do is if the character's got any funny shapes or a different shaped ear, I'll usually sculpt it from this reference, and then I'll use the move tool, like with a large diameter, and sort of move it around a little from there and then do any tweaks. But you know, usually people don't really pay that much attention to the ears, so yeah, we don't worry about it too much. So I'm just going to add this little stud in there because she's got earrings or studs in the reference, and just as a little nice little touch to the ear, I added a little like a little dimple or divot underneath where the earring is, just to make it look a bit more believable and realistic. Yeah, then mirror it over and you know, pretty much call the head done at this point, because you know, she looks like the character, the reference has been followed, it looks good. So at this point we'll be done with it, and we'll probably move on to the hair. Oh no, we move on to the body next. So yeah, we're just going to do the same thing here. Line the body up, use the usual reference that I've got because I have found and kept some decent reference that I like. And yeah, I think we're going to move on to sorting the body out and just getting the proportions right and doing using the head to make sure that she's the right height and scale. So yeah, I'll leave it here and I'll jump in again if anything interesting comes up. So yeah, just working out the body, merging the parts together so that I've got solid pieces to work with instead of all the separate muscle geometry, and working up one side because I'll mirror it all over when I'm happy with it so that I can pose it. But that normally means doing a bit of reorganizing in the hierarchy. It doesn't take very long. I usually speed it up a little bit more or just skip over it. But yeah, we'll get these legs and arms and everything with a kind of base sculpt on them and mirror it back over, and we'll call it there for the body, and I think I'll start posing it after that. So yeah, I'll jump back in when we get to the posing. Yeah, proportionately, I didn't want to make her look too muscular. I think SPIDER-GWEN's supposed to be quite slender, which is why I brought the shoulders in quite a bit, minus the readjustments I made at the top there. I did make her chest and torso a little bit slimmer, just because slimmer torso and wider hips is usually quite appealing. So yeah, we'll let this keep going, and because I'm just reorganising in the hierarchy at the moment, and I'll jump back in a little while. Yes, here we go, working on the pose. Again, there's not a lot here in terms of what's going on with their feet in the reference, so I had to just use my imagination a little here, take some artistic liberties if you want, but I'm guessing that she's either leaning against the wall or taking a step, and seeing as I didn't really want to sculpt a wall or have anything for her to lean on, I just wanted it to be a standing sculpture. We went with it like she's taking a step forward rather than leaning, but to me in the reference it looks like she could be doing either. She could be leaning or she could be taking a step, so you know, take from it what you will, but yeah, I went with the step. So I twisted the head off center there. I'm happy with how the head and everything looks. So we're going to go up and start breaking the symmetry, particularly on the head. The head's the thing that I try and keep in the center. I'll move it last. Sometimes I'll pose the body and you know, do some more work on the head before I pose it, but I'm happy with the head here. So yeah, we've merged the torso and we're going to start sculpting up the base anatomy on this thing. You know, if she was wearing baggy clothes, I would probably not go as far, but because she's wearing like a superhero suit, we do a pretty decent sculpt on the anatomy on this one. So yeah, for now we'll let this keep going. I'm just sculpting up the base anatomy before I merge the entire model. I'm not sure what's the point I start working on the hair, but I think I do the entire body first and then start doing the hair on this one. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes I'll do the hair while I'm doing the head sculpt, but it was a lot. So yeah, I think I go with finishing the body off and getting everything proportionally correct. Then I just start adding everything from there, like hair and clothes and stuff like that. Yeah, with the legs as well, I'm pretty comfortable with the leg anatomy and the anatomy of people's legs and torsos. So for some of this, I really don't even bring up any reference, just because I've done it quite a few times now. So yeah, overall happy with the anatomy that I put onto this thing, even without reference. You know, same goes for you guys. At some point, you'll you know, you'll be confident enough and you'll know what goes where, especially in certain types of poses, to just do it. That just comes with time and practice. So yeah, we'll let this keep going and I'll jump in again in a little while. So what was going on there is, with some of the smoothing that I've done and some of the joining that I've done, the creases, they were kind of infilling, and because it's an approximation of where the software thinks that these creases would go, and because I tried to lower the resolution, it created like a strange crease effect I wasn't happy with. So I went back in and, you know, worked up those creases, and, you know, using the mask tool, I masked off a private area, if you want, and started moving over the legs and things like that, just to, you know, make it more believable, in the sense that the fat would be of her thighs, for example, would be pushing over, and you wouldn't see as smooth of a transition between her groin area and her upper thigh. So the same happens here when I'm doing her arms. Look, it's about creating contact points, and you know, when your arm's leaning up against your torso here, for example, it will create bulging in the skin where there's muscle underneath and stuff like that. So it's just things to look at, and like this is where reference will really help if you're not sure. But again, I've done this quite a few times now. I've got a relatively good idea of how this stuff looks, so I'm only really using the reference as a guide for the muscles at this point. When it comes to contact points and you know how the body sort of mushes against itself, I'm pretty comfortable with that. You can usually use your best judgment. So yeah, have a decent anatomy reference. If you're comfortable doing the contact points, just use your best judgment, guys. There is decent reference out there, by the way, for contact areas, like if you know, for example, if your skin is sort of bunching up where your arm's lowered down, stuff like that. You can find decent reference for that if you're not comfortable. So yeah, that's just worth bearing in mind. So at this point as well, I've merged the entire body. I think I did the hands at this point. No, the hands are separate still because I wanted to work on the pose a little more. I'm doing a manual decimation here, like I said in a previous video. Decimating the model doesn't give you as much control. You lose a lot of detail in areas like the face. So I'll usually do a manual decimation using the smooth brush with 0 strength, and I'll set the brush to dynamic topology, and just very gently rub over it and you know, set the amount of the topology, the dynamic topology, sorry, so that it's lower and it just an amount I'm comfortable with, where it's not so dense and difficult to control. It's just the only reason I really do that, guys, is like I said, a normal decimation is just not, there's not enough control there for me, so I do it this way. But you know, each to their own. You know, maybe I'm using it wrong, I couldn't tell you, but this is just the way I do it, guys. So here I'm just going to finalize the anatomy of the arm, make sure that it looks feminine enough while we can still see the muscle, work on the contact points, and I think finally merge the hands in a little while. But you know, I just want it to look like it's, you know, believably human, or it's believable in the sense that, you know, she's at least proportionately right and the contact points look good. So yeah, at this point we're going to work on the hair. I try a couple of things. So I tried doing a hair sculpt, but I very quickly give up on this. It's not, you know, it works for a little while as a placeholder, but yeah, I don't stick with this. I end up going with a hair strands solution like I did with my A2 sculpt. But this is also something to just make you aware of. I do cut some of this out because it just takes so blooming long, and these videos are already long enough. So yeah, if you want to see how I did that, there's a more detailed version of that on my A2 sculpt. It'll be coming up soon anyway, the hair sculpt, but there is a more detailed version of that on A2. I also dropped in a base mesh for the mask there, just so that it's there and I know what things I've got left to do. It just helps me keep track of it, but I do a little bit more work on that. So here we go, I start the hair sculpt off here, and I think once I get around to the back, I kind of just cut off the recording because I know this is going to take a long time. You know, with the base hairs, the flyaways and everything like that, it just starts to go on. So I'll cut away, and yeah, here we are. I'm back in the room with a full head of hair. Yeah, I mean, so far I'm pretty happy with this hair. We'll let this play out because I'm just doing a bit of tidy up. And yeah, I think we'll jump back in when anything interesting happens, guys. So yeah. So here we start sculpting her up like she's wearing her suit, just to make it a bit more believable. I also think that I'll separate the hands. Once the coat is built, I'll separate the hands, the arms, and I'll merge them with the hands. So that it's just because I don't want to merge the hand with the forehead. It's just a pain in the butt, and I don't want to do that. So another thing I want to note is that I do realise that this hair could be a problem when I come to 3D printing. So there's every chance that when I do finally 3D print these things, if they've got hair like this, you know, there'll be a small section that just shows what I did to make the hair manageable for a 3D printer. So it might mean merging it all and doing a bit of a sculpt. You know, we'll figure that out when I get to it, guys. But yeah, I am aware that this type of hair could cause a problem for the 3D printer, but it's something that I'll be working on when I get to that point. At this moment, I just want to make the sculpts look good so that you guys have got something interesting to watch, and I can put work out there that I'm happy with. But yeah, just as like a side note, I'm aware that this hair probably won't work with the 3D printer, but I will figure that out when it comes to it, guys. So yeah, I'll let this keep going, and I'll jump in again when anything interesting comes up. Okay, so with a hood here, my original idea was to do what I do with a lot of my clothing sculpts, and that sort of merge a base, and then sort of using the mask using the mask, I'll do an extraction and sort of have a thin version of that hood. But to be honest, I don't think it needed it, so I just stuck with the mesh that I'd sculpted, and I think it came out pretty well, so I'm pleased with that. This mask extract here is just for the coat. Again, the clothing on this is relatively simple because she's wearing a skin-tight leotard, basically, as a superhero suit. So, you know, a lot of the volume of her outfit is kind of in her jacket. And yeah, I mean, this is just a base for now. Trying to get everything right, make sure the contacts look good and there's nothing poking through, because again, that'll cause problems for 3D printers. So yeah, we'll let this go. I'm gonna, using the tube tool, I think, or the cylinder, I'm gonna add the base, the cuffs of her sleeve. I'll probably jump back in a minute when we get to the zipper, because that's quite an interesting part, and I've already had some feedback on that. So yeah, we'll leave this for now, and I'll jump back in when we get to the zipper, just to talk about how I did it. So when you're sculpting thinner areas like here at the front of this hood, I think it's important to go into the brush settings and set it to front facing only, because if it's not set to that, you'll end up sculpting the back of it because of the amount of overlap that the brush has. So yeah, it's just something to bear in mind when you're sculpting thin sections of anything. I would always set it to front facing only, and then make sure you're sculpting looking at the side that you want to sculpt on. It's just a tip, because you know it's very easy to destroy the mesh, especially on thin areas like the hood or the collar here. So yeah, just a little note there, editor's note if you want, I don't know. Okay, so here we go. The first thing I'm doing is making the shape of one of the zipper teeth, and then I will have that selected, and I'll go into the layers area, and at the top where it says add, you can actually drop a tube tool onto the actual piece that you've sculpted for the teeth, and then it's just a matter of in the bottom here setting the number turning the number up. So I would normally pose the tube and then change the number afterwards, because you can then adjust it so that the gaps are correct and there's not too many or any overlaps. So yeah, it's just something to think about. But yeah, it's as simple as making a shape that you want, dropping the tube tool onto it, or it onto the tube tool in your layers, after adding it obviously under the layer section, and then changing the number. And it's really that simple, guys. There's plenty of tutorials out there on it, but it's not a difficult thing to do. If you want me to give you a demonstration of how I do it in a slower setting rather than this speed sculpt type of thing, then let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll do a quick, just a 5-minute tutorial on how I use it. But yeah, after that we basically sculpted a zipper for the actual, for her hands to use for when she zips up her jacket, and then that was basically it for that. We're going to move on to sculpting the eye socket areas for her mask. So what I did there was I tried to use a mask extract on her face to get the kind of contours that I was looking for and make sure it would fit on her face. Then I moved it over to a sphere and tried to sculpt it around that, because it's not going to follow her face. If you look at the mask, it's just a rounded eye section. So I scrapped that in the end because it was just becoming difficult to manage the mesh, and using the mesh that I did extract, I drew a shape on a ball so that it had that nice superhero mask curve to it, and yeah, then I just extracted it from the ball and smoothed the edges out, and that's how I got the eye sockets for that. The actual eyeglass, again, that's just an extraction from the center of from the ball, inside of the actual socket area, right? So the actual outline of the eye, I masked off the inside of that, just extracted it, and boom, I've got the eyeglass. Because I'm not going to do any real glass effects with it, I want it to not see-through. And yeah, so that was relatively simple. I mean, I'm probably really butchering the explanation for it, but again, it's something that if you guys want to see how it did that, I could probably do a slowed down version and just show you what I did. But yeah, that's that. These speed sculpts aren't really for that. They're just to kind of give you an idea of my thought process, and for me to quickly try and explain what I did and how I did it and why I did it. But yeah, the why is because bringing the extraction off of her face for the eye socket area on the mask was just, it was unruly, and the mesh was getting damaged, and I just couldn't be bothered to keep repairing it. So we went with a sphere instead, and it gave a better look. So at this point we're going to merge the hands. I cut the arms off there, merge the hands with it. Just again, the reason I separated the arms is because, first of all, I don't want to merge the hand with her forehead on the other hand, and second of all, these are going to be 3D prints eventually anyway, so there's no harm in cutting off the arm where it is. It's probably going to be cut off anyway at some point. So yeah, we'll let this sculpt of the hand play out. I think I'll do both hands and do any tweaks to the arms, and because I've done this 100 times in other videos, we'll let this play out for now, and if anything comes up, or anything different or interesting comes up, I'll jump back in, guys. here I end up trying a mask extraction for the outline of her emblems and her logo on her suit. It doesn't really work out, so what I end up doing is I'll use the tube tool, go all the way around the outline with a thin tube, a bit like I did with A2's edging on the sculpt I did with her. On her armour, there was a kind of edging that I'd used the tube tool for. And yeah, we end up going with that, and I'll just paint the actual colour on underneath. One of the reasons I tried to have it separate like this is, one, to make it easier to paint, and two, because I thought that it would just be one of those one and done things when the mask is done, but it just ended up not looking good. I really just wasn't happy with it. So like I said, I end up using the tube tool to go all the way around the edging, and I'll paint the colour onto the underside. I do the same with her webbing on her suit. The whole thing's built using a tube tool to a really sort of thin radius. And yeah, I just, you know, it's almost like drawing it out, but using the tube tool. So it's really that simple. What you see is kind of what you get. It's building an edge, because this just was looking a bit rough and I wasn't happy with it. So the reason I moved on to it is because I saw it with just the mask, and I was like, do you know what? It kind of looks okay before I do an extraction. So I use the extracted mesh that looks really rough as a guide. And yeah, just like I said, like you can see here, I go all the way around the edge with the tube tool. I do end up cutting a lot of this out again, so in a moment it'll just cut to a point where there's a whole chunk of it done. It's just because there was so much of it again, guys. It's the same as before with the hair. I cut out what's repetitive and takes a long time, so at some point this will cut off and you'll see an almost complete version of it. Yeah, I think it's here. So yeah, we'll let this carry on just for now, while I finish off the edging, and you know, I'll jump back in once we're done with that. I don't think there's much left of this actual sculpt, so I think we'll be moving on to painting soon. But yeah, we'll let this play out, and you guys can just have a look at how I sort of made these edgings and just where my head's at with it. So yeah, enjoy. Okay, so there's the completed body. I'm going to add the edging around her hand here, and I think after this we're going to start moving on to the webbing of her suit. But honestly it's the same as what we've just done. I'm just using my best judgment to kind of draw the areas I can't see, and I try my best to keep the number of vertical stripes even, so that everything looks, you know, like it works together, like it's even. So we're going to add the vertical stripes for the webbing sections. I think at some point I cut this off as well, because there's an awful lot of this, and I'll jump back in once I'm you know, doing some of the actual horizontal webs on her suit. But guys, this is just simple stuff. It's literally just a tube tool set with a really low diameter. Yeah, here we go, adding the webbing. There's not an awful lot to say about this, guys. It really is as simple as it looks. Use the tube tool and draw it out just like you're, you know, using a pencil to draw it out. It's that simple. But yeah, we'll let this play out for now. I think I do cut this off and jump back in when it's at a more finished state. But yeah, we'll let this carry on for now. And you know, if you've got any questions about this type of stuff, guys, or anything that I'm doing here, Obviously I'm not giving a very detailed explanation of what I'm doing, because that's not what these videos are about. It's more about my thought process and just, you know, quickly why I did this or how I did this. But if there's anything that you're more interested in and you'd really like to see a more detailed version of, then please let me know in the comments, and you know, I'll do my best to get to it and maybe do a short, maybe a YouTube short or something, just a quick explanation of it. I don't know, but I'll find a way. If it's something that you guys are a lot more interested in or want a slightly more detailed explanation of why or what I did. But yeah, with that said, let's let this carry on, and I'll jump back in when I get to the next stage, which I believe is probably painting. So yeah, enjoy for now, guys. I cut out a decent chunk of that. I'm pretty sure this is where I've either set up the other side so it's ready to go, or you know, done the actual the webs. But I think, yeah, we're done with that. So at this point I'm going to separate the head because I want to make it easier for me to paint with. So I duplicate the whole sculpt and I try and cut her head away, and then what I'll do is on the actual sculpt that I left, which I copied from, I'll cut the head off of that, just so that I've got two separate pieces, because yeah, just I didn't want to make things more difficult for myself than I had to be, and this way I was able to just, you know, drop a whole color on the entire mesh for the bases and things like that. So yeah, separating the head out, and again, you know, these are going to be 3D printed at some point, so it doesn't really matter if I separate the model here or if I do it later, it's going to be done. So I decided to go with it here just to make it easier for me to paint and separate her head there. So yeah, we'll leave this again for now, guys, and I'll jump back in when we get to the painting area and the lighting section. Okay, so I'm relatively happy with that. If you did notice there, I don't know if anybody noticed, but I quickly made all of the webbing on her suit like a silvery sort of colour. It feels like it's got a silvery sort of reflective side to it. I might be wrong, but from the reference, it looks like it's kind of silvery. So yeah, we added a silver to all of the webbing on her suit, and we're going to add the base colours for everything now. One thing I don't really do here is do a huge dirt and grime and wear pass on this, because I wanted the sculpt to feel clean. Every time, or every, you know, instance I've seen of Gwen Stacy in Spider-Gwen, she doesn't usually look too beat up. I think she looks relatively clean a lot of the time. So, and this isn't one of those situations where I imagine her having been in a fight previous to this. So yeah, we kind of lay off the dirt pass and the wear pass because I just wanted it to look clean. The one area that I do add some sort of like manual shading, if you want, is on the coat, because I wanted it to feel like it had some real depth and thickness to it, but without using the built-in render tools for that, because the problem is it adds that those shadows and everything to the actual rest of the sculpt, and the only place I really wanted that was on the coat, so I manually paint in some depth and some shadow to the areas on the coat. But other than that, a lot of this is mostly just painting it, because like I said, wasn't looking for a very worn, battle damaged suit in this respect, or even a well-worn suit, because you know, it's Spider-GWEN, she'd probably be a bit cleaner than the boys, you know what I mean? So yeah, we'll jump back in when we get to the to anything interesting, or if anything interesting pops up. But yeah, for now it's just base colours. So. Okay, so here we're going to paint the skin. This is something that I've done in every single video that I do, because I like to have a stylized, semi-realistic feel to the skin. So it's the same as always, guys. I'm just going to repeat myself here one more time. It's base layer and then top layer with a slight shine on it and some translucency, and then just paint the colors underneath, like red for warmth, blue for depth, and yellow for bone and fat. So you know, use your best judgment on this, guys. Again, if this is something you'd like to see me do a bit more of a detailed tutorial on, then let me know in the comments, and I'll start knocking out some shorts to try and explain what I'm doing here, rather than doing it in these videos, because it's a speed sculpt. By the time I'm done talking about what I want to explain to you, I'm on to the next thing in the sculpture, so it becomes confusing and I lose track of where I am. So if you want to see more detailed versions of these things, please type it in the comments. And get the engagement up, and because I do read all of the comments, I don't get that many, I'll take it from there and do what I can. This might be a good excuse, like I said, to start doing some YouTube shorts just for quick explanations on bits and bobs like this. So yeah, let me know in the comments, and I'll try and work something out for you guys if you want more. Okay, so at this point I realised I'm missing a little detail on the sculpt anyway, so I had some sort of ribs to the jacket, because it's supposed to be a puffer. This is very quick and very rough, but it's just to give you an idea. And then I think this is the point I move on to adding a kind of dirt and depth pass manually, because like, again, I don't want to add it into the actual rendering, because it puts it all over the body, and then you've got like all of the edgings around the webbing on her suit start to look like they've got a bit of ambient occlusion on them, and that's not what I was going for here. So yeah, I manually paint this in, because I didn't want to overdo it with the ambient occlusion and just ruin the rest of the model. So yeah, again, we'll let this play out for now, and we'll jump back in. This is just me adding ambient occlusion to where I think I want it, rather than relying on the software to do it. So here we're going to build up a base for her. This is something I'm trying to do a little bit more often, because although every other model's had a base, it's been it's really simple. It's just been a cylinder. So I'm also now trying to build up some type of base with at least her name or the character's name on it, because I just feel it feels a bit more, it looks like it would go on the shelf a bit nicer, so from this point on I'm going to be doing, at the bare minimum, a base kind of like what Gwen's got here, and the one I did for Chief Jebediah, for Chief Jebediah long nuts in my previous video. So they're setting the depth to the brush, so as long as I stay on the top layer, it won't, go past a certain depth. It makes painting things like this really easy and really quick. So as long as you remember to set that back to what it was originally, because if you're trying to paint these creases, you will get nothing in the actual crevices, you'll just get it on the top. So, and this is the final stage here. We're going to add a 3-point light setup, same as usual. main light, fill light, and an edge light or a rim light, just to bring her off the background. So yeah, you'll kind of do this based off of where the main light's going, and you know, the edge light. So the main light should be there, the fill light should be there to bring up some shadows on the opposite side of where the main light is, and the fill light should be sort of, if you imagine a triangle, it should be the tip of the triangle filling in the edge on the side where the main light is. That might sound confusing. Again, if you guys want to see a more detailed version of that, or me to explain it a little bit clearer, let me know. I might start dropping in some YouTube shorts just as quick tutorials for these things, but you know, for now we're done. I'll let you guys enjoy the final turnarounds, and yeah, as usual guys, thanks for watching. I hope that this is helpful to some of you. Please like and subscribe because it helps me, share it because it helps the video get out there, and yeah, you know, I always have fun doing these guys, and it's always, you know, I appreciate the comments and things like that. So yeah, that's me signing off for this one, guys. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate you all, and happy sculpting, everybody.